Welcome to the Deer Society Podcast. Here's your host, Brian Lemke.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Deer Society Podcast. I'm Brian Lemke, and today joined by Mike Ducart and JJ Ducart. What's up, guys?
Glad to be here.
It's a beautiful day.
Well, we've made it into July, and it seems like summer has almost come and gone already. Fall is right around the corner. Everybody's starting to think about deer season now. I know Mike's thinking about deer season. He's got his camo on already. He's ready to get out there. Ambitious. Everybody's getting excited. It's been quite the year with everything going on from COVID to everything else in the news, and I think that I can speak for all of us and all deer hunters that we are ready to turn the corner and get into whitetail season here. So what's going on, guys? Getting ready for deer season. What have you guys been up to here recently?
Yeah, pretty busy. Summer months, food plots, thinking about where they need to go. Actually, Andy will be here next week, and we're going to go over a bunch of mapping and strategy out at the property. Get ready for more food plots, stand placement. We're going to talk a little bit about scent control. That's going to be coming up here too, getting our gear prepped, shoot our bows, and pretty much you got 2-3 months to get ready for the season.
Yeah. I mean, as far as myself goes, I've been trying to kind of oversee the whole COVID crisis, and, thank goodness we escaped it because we were considered a critical industry. And, it's just a matter of getting parts in and just things you don't think of anymore. Now we got, tariff issues with a part or two here or there that could, shut down an entire production of a product and some tiny little piece. And it's just little things like that, and then we have the Deer Hunting Man program, and there's a lot of travel, that goes along with that. So that's been kind of a struggle. But, it's been kind of a crazy deal since the winter months broke and spring got here, and now it's summer. And we're already shipping out. I mean, we're shipping out. We picked up some really nice accounts, with the Illusion brand, getting into Tractor Supplies. We got a good distribution up in Canada now, too, with some big distributors up there, some big store chains, and so things are going really well. It's just been busy. And then, you got to get out there and work on the farm.
I thought you were going to say, you got to get out there and work on your golf game.
Well, that's just a given, I mean, I'm always prepared to go out and shoot a high round. I mean, I'm always clubs in the back of the truck and everything, so, but,
Yeah, that's funny. Well, good deal. Yeah, so season's coming. We're going to be talking a lot today about scent control. Scent control has really changed throughout the years here, and how people look at scent control and some of the products out there on the market. We're going to talk about some of the things that are effective, have worked for us, and what we've seen, and how we're preparing now to start our kind of scent control process throughout the season. So Mike, I'll kind of throw this to you. Let's talk about how scent control has really evolved throughout the years since you've kind of been introduced to it.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to it from a couple angles. One from my own experiences, and the other from an industrial perspective. When I first started to deer hunt, obviously my deer hunting background came from gun hunting because I was a waterfowl outfitter. That's what I did. So there was peak migration going on when it was the best time to go hunt. And so I only hunted those small windows during gun season. So that's really was my experience and my understanding. When it came to the way we hunted back in the day, and I'm going to say back in the day because it was party hunting, you hooked up with friends who had family farms, and they'd get big groups, and you'd you'd sit in the morning, see if anything came by. Then you would go out and you'd have lunch, cruise around, see things. You'd have lunch, go back out, you'd do some drives, and then you'd sit in the evening. And that was really kind of the way that you hunted. So we didn't even consider scent control. In fact, it was the exact opposite. It was kind of embarrassing how bad the scents and the things that we did, anywhere from guys smoking in a tree to sitting in a, bar for lunch, and, all the things that you couldn't even never get away with if you really wanted to be serious. That's just the way we hunted. So you have that. And really, there wasn't a lot on the market back then either. I know there was a lot of talk about, and I used to do it myself. When I first started bow hunting, we would take baking soda. Oh, we'll take baking soda and we'll neutralize the odors. And that was kind of the concept. And you'd brush your teeth with baking soda. You'd even take a shower and you could use some baking soda. So baking soda was the first thought process there. Then you started to see commercial products come out. And now we're talking about UV, and then, you're getting in. It was more about really washing your clothes than it was anything else. A lot of the people, and if you'd go to a seminar or speak to somebody that's very well known, a man like Miles Keller, I mean, he's very well known. He goes way back. And Miles, I'm not saying he didn't do scent control. What I'm saying is that wasn't his priority. Miles's priority was more strategically being able to get to a place and hunt the deer in his weak spot. Okay, so that's where he really focused on, and that really was scent control. Now, then Gabe Schaffner, same exact thing. He would get off work and he didn't have time to shower and stuff like that. He'd tell me these stories, and actually it was in one of his seminars. And so his core thing was to get to the key stand that he identified based off of wind direction, and he knew that was a weak spot for the deer. So that's the mentality back there, back in the day. Well, then we start getting sprays and things like that, and they had an impact. They started having impacts. So you're getting washing your clothes, you're getting your sprays, and then pretty soon you got something that you can shower with. And so scent control became mainstream because bow hunting became way more popular. Okay. Now, our experience with that was I was doing waterfowl. The boys started getting older. I wanted to teach them not how to gun hunt the way we did because it was kind of a free-for-all. And I decided to teach them how to actually understand, communicate with deer. And I knew my business had to go there at some point in time. I had to get into the bigger markets. I had to get past just waterfowl, into turkey, into whitetail. And so we go to the next stage. I take the boys, I get them bows, I make them learn deer, make them get up close and personal. And as we start this process, and I don't really want to date this, but I just think back about the tools that we were using. Bear was really the only bow out there. It was the only real compound bow, with the aluminum arrows and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just a single pin, and you'd have to kind of instinct shoot. And that's really kind of where the starting points were. So anyway, we go a little further. The boys get older. Buy them Dartons was a great bow for the youth at that point in time. Picked them up their bows, got them out there, and, occasionally we would see a few deer come through in the evening. And that was about it. And then we started thinking more about the scent control. That carbon came out, the carbon clothing and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, wow, that's so expensive, and being stubborn the way I was and bullheaded like many hunters are, I think. I'm not going to pay that kind of money for that. Blah, 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 blah. And then pretty soon you kind of started to see a little bit of proof. It's like, well, now we're in a position where I can afford it, and I need to, give this a shot. So bought us all outfits. I could write it off because I had a hunting business now. So we all got outfits, and I'm telling you, the world changed. We were paying attention to scent. We were showering. We were keeping our clothing in a bag. We were hanging it. We were doing the basics, okay? And all of a sudden, we started seeing deer. I mean, a lot of deer. And that's really where it started to kick in for us. I mean, I know that's a long story, but that's kind of my experience. And then now, I mean, it's a level that's 10 times that the way we approach scent.
Yeah, I remember looking back to when we first got those scent lock suits, just thinking about how we use scent control now, how we used scent control then. Basically, we clean the scent lock suits, one of them, I think they were even maybe an off-brand, a Cabela's off-brand or something. We got a scent lock bag, and we would just put it in the bag, and when we were done hunting, just throw it back in the bag, go hunt, throw it back in the bag, go hunt, throw it back in the bag. So much contamination there. I think I even shared like a scent lock bag with Chris at the time. So just two people throwing all their, bacteria, sweaty clothes, because it's scent lock, it can solve all the problems. Yeah. You just throw it back in the bag and you're good for the next time a week later when you go hunting. So yeah, we put a little too much confidence in that in the suit, but yeah, definitely saw a lot more results even just doing that compared to what we had before, which was just, cotton.
I think what
Cotton
was
camo
happening
pants.
was, and JJ's brought this up many times, is the deer that you don't see that smell you. And I think that little bit of effort that we put into it, and at that time was a ton of effort, the deer weren't smelling us from a distance. Okay, so now we're getting visuals, and that's when I say we were seeing more deer. It was like, yeah, we're seeing a lot more deer, but that doesn't mean they were getting in, up close and personal. No,
Yeah.
it did happen sometimes, but it was a progression.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I've seen that too. And I think a lot of guys think, well, I didn't get blown at in the tree stand today, so I didn't get winded, or deer didn't smell me. Well, I don't think that's always the case. I think there's a lot of deer, and I've experienced this. I can remember a specific time, and it was in South Dakota, and we were out there hunting, and there was these deer, and they were a long ways away. I mean, they were probably 400 yards away, and it's wide open terrain out there. And we walked into a situation where these deer kind of just appeared, and we had a terrible, the wind was blowing right at them, and we stopped, and one of the guys I was with actually said, watch this. And those deer, you could see one picked its head up, two picked its head up. Next thing you know, that whole herd was looking our direction. And it's not that we were completely out in the open, but our wind was directly at them, and you could tell that they could smell us. And next thing you know, these deer are 400 yards away, and they took off running the other way. We obviously didn't hear them blow. We didn't, but that's a perfect example of those deer smelled us from that far away. And I think that happens a lot as, for us whitetail hunters, and sometimes we get tunnel vision and only see, what we see from the tree stand, right? And I think, that happens a lot with big bucks too. Guys are like, well, I know this big buck's here, not seeing them. Well, I'm not getting blown at, so I'm not bumping them.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily the case, so, I don't think that it means if you're getting blown at or not getting blown at, that you can't dictate, your scent control success, I guess, on just what you see or hear.
Yeah, and especially with the ground scent aspect,
I was just
lay your
bring
trail
that
going in, walking back to your truck, and that's trails there for, if it doesn't rain super hard, it's probably there for days or a week. So at night, big buck's walking around, he basically just tracks exactly where you walked. Okay, there's where he parked. There's where his stand is. Here's his access. You have no clue because you're not there, 7 days later. And he's just patterning you, and you have no idea. So you keep doing the same thing. And most mature bucks are nocturnal. So, yeah.
And
there's
you
so
can
much to
take
it.
that a step further, too, because now, okay, you think that big buck, all right, you don't think he knows you're there because he doesn't, you don't see him, you don't spook him. Okay, so there's the scent thing that JJ said, dander's microscopic. It's skin cells. You are dropping dander all the time. And if you're using stuff that dries you out and makes you itchy, especially in the fall, I get dry skin. I'm an older guy, you're just contaminating just swaths of areas. And just that tiny little brush of the grass, right at their nose level, they pick up on that. And they know exactly what it is. Think how stinky your boots can get. So you step down, poof, and that big, huge, imagine if you could see that air and that scent. It'd be a big cloud of just contamination as you're walking through, woof, woof, woof. And if you add moisture to that, moisture and scent molecules need moisture to be identified. And so when you add the moisture to that, at a molecular level, now it's enhancing it by 100-fold. Okay, so if you're not thinking at that level, and we never have before until now, you're doing things that you have absolutely no idea that you're doing. Now let's take it a step further. That big buck may be in an area where maybe he don't see you, but maybe he hears you. Maybe he hears your truck. Maybe he sees you walking. It's at night. You don't know you bumped him because he was out there in the dark in the morning when you were walking in, and he just watched you just walk into your stand and watched right where you went to. Well, he's not going to go walk by that. He just saw you go into your stand, and you have no idea that happened. So there's a lot to this game, and that's where JJ kind of matches scent control with strategy. and hunting strategy is from, and what I mean by that is from a positioning perspective, how to get in and out. I mean, that's a huge part. Now you're going back to those strategies I talked about that Miles used to use, that Gabe used to use, and I think they really go hand in hand.
I completely agree, and I think that scent control is, as much as it's a giant piece of the puzzle, it's not the whole puzzle. So we're not sitting here saying that, oh, if you do everything right and have perfect scent control, and I think perfect scent control is impossible. You can't have perfect scent control, but if you have good scent control practices, you're going to be a successful deer hunter. Well, that's not it. It's a piece of the puzzle, a very important one. And I think, we talk about this all the time. Eliminate as many variables as you can and put as many odds in your favor as you can. So I'm going to ask this question. Coming from the carbon suits in that era, and seeing a little bit of difference there, what are you doing now that's better or more beneficial or different from what you were just doing then?
Well, I tell you what, this is my strength. I'm not going out and shooting 200-inch deer all the time because I don't put the effort in to do it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've studied animals is my thing, and teaching people and instructing. My whole life has been around that, helping others be successful, okay? That's what fulfills me, okay? To see someone shoot a deer of a lifetime using my product, and that could be a 120-inch deer or it could be a 220-inch deer. It doesn't make any difference. That's my cause. That's my purpose. That's what fulfills me. So I look at it from a problem-solving perspective, and I look at it from a animal thought process, behavior process perspective, okay? And then I try and solve that problem. So if you're looking at what's going on in the trends, and this is what a lot of companies do out there, by the way, they look at, oh, that's hot, let's copy that, let's do that, you know what I mean? That's not anything even close to what I do, okay? What I do is I step back and I say, what just happened there? You know what I mean? How did that happen? What happened? And then I break it down. Why is it happening? How can that happen? And so I studied the deer's behavior. And what I knew, and this is before I even started addressing scent control, was that deer communicate, all animals communicate with a couple of different ways of communication. One is vocal. Okay, you have a vocal communication, and not a lot of people realize that was a big deal. Okay, well, I figured that out real quick. You can literally have conversations with deer because they talk to each other. Okay, the other thing is posturing and positions. We as humans are doing it too. So we communicate by voice, we communicate by using our hands and being, emotional and putting inflection into things and rolling your eyes and, crossing your arms, those kinds of things. And then by scent. Now, humans communicate by scent on a very primitive scale. But we do. We just don't really know we're doing it, and we don't really use it as a, kind of a strategic thought process. Let's put it that way. Deer, on the other hand, exactly opposite. That's one of their biggest things that they use for communicating, and it's scent. And they're built that way, okay? Their olfactory is so advanced. You have to understand their olfactory. So it was, to quite simply put it, and you may have heard this analogy, you walk into the house and you're like, oh, we're having spaghetti tonight. Awesome, man. I'm hungry. A deer walks in the same scenario. Oh, I smell oregano. I smell tomato paste. I smell flour. I smell yeast. There's a little bit of garlic there. They got it broke down into all these different little molecules. They can identify the scent molecules by what they are, okay? And so watching these deer and how they behave and all the experiences that I had out into the wild with verbal communication was what I was using. I learned so much about their nose. And so we started paying a lot of attention to their nose. We never talked about it. We only talked about the verbal communication. But our scent control at that time was ridiculous. And we never latched on to any one thing because nothing was foolproof. Or nothing was at a high rate of effectiveness. So you had all the variables. You had to do everything, as much as you could. And we were super anal about it. JJ's worse than I am, you know what I mean? And so anyway, let's just get right to the point. So if you look at what the deer is able to do, the deer is able to break this down into specific molecules. And now they take those molecules, they process it in their brain, they identify what it is, and they react to it. Okay? What are they reacting to 100% of the time that's costing you your hunt? It's the human body odor. Okay? 100% of the time. Now, you can have other foreign things that they're not used to in the timber that are going to alarm them. And it may even make them blow and run off, but not 100% of the time. Okay? Gasoline, well, they've smelled gasoline because there was a tractor parked. You know, you have to look at it. Oh, this deer lives within a mile of a house, so they're hearing a dog bark because the guy takes the dog on the walk through the, you know. So there's things that they will tolerate, okay? And there's things that they absolutely will not tolerate, and that's your human body odor, period. They won't tolerate it, okay? So that's where the focus went. How do we eliminate the 100% thing that is going to cost you your hunt? And that was the quest for phase.
So explain to me what the kind of science and technology is behind phase, kind of taking it a step further there.
Yeah, and it's a new technology. So when you come out with a product that's so unique, that's never been used in a way that all other products have been used, and you know, people have been imprinted on scent control, what it is, what it means. I have to suppress and get rid of all scent molecules and everything that there is in the world. Well, that's not even possible. Okay, so rather than trying to achieve the impossible, we went after, let's get rid of the stuff that will absolutely 100% take you out of your hunt, okay? And that's the human body odors. So the way this process works is there's a couple things that we're giving off, okay? And we haven't refined everything. We don't have everything 100% dialed in yet. But, and that's what I mean with additional products coming. But what we knew is that skin, you know, I could never figure out why the heck am I burning out a stand after 2 or 3 days? And I know I had perfect scent control, but then damn deer know I'm there already. You know, they just know. Okay? What is happening that they've figured this out? And because I watched them walk right on my trail, didn't pick me up. I watched them go downwind, they didn't pick me up. But after 2-3 days, the stand's burnt out. Okay? So it has to be skin cells. You're dropping skin cells, you're dropping dander. And then it started to click. It made sense. If someone's got an allergy to a cat or a horse, they can completely identify exactly what we're talking about. They don't even have to, you know, think about it. The cat could have been in the room. They come in, boom, right away they know. Same thing. If the deer's nose is that advanced and you're leaving your human dander, that's something that we need to start paying attention to. Okay, so that's one aspect. The other is, what are all the different scent molecules that we give off that are unique to us and not our surroundings? Well, that's sweat, that's oils, that's, you know, you're going to the bathroom, it's your breath, it's all those things, okay? And so there was a technology that we ran into that solved actually both of those problems. One is the active ingredient would encapsulate what we call malodor type molecules, which is an organic molecule, a smell molecule, and that's what the kind of molecules that we're talking about. It could be garbage, organic garbage. That's a malodor style molecule. So this attacks malodor molecules, which is the oils, the things that we just talked about that the human body gives off. And it doesn't attack and kill them. What it does is it encapsulates them. So as soon as it comes in contact with this active ingredient, it gets encapsulated immediately. And once it's encapsulated, when it goes into the olfactory, you can identify what that is. So you don't smell it. It's not there, according to your system of identification, because you can't identify it. So you don't even know it's there. That's the concept behind it. So target the human body odor, malodor molecules, with this technology. And then next, the skin and the dander. So we created a product. It's actually a system because there's no one thing you can do. You can't just take a bottle of spray and and you're good. Okay, you can't do that. So in order to get all those molecules, you have to cover 100% of your body. Then you have to protect it as you manufacture more. And then you have to reapply once you've generated more, sweat or whatever it is as you get out into the field. So that was the concept we went for. So you wash completely and you coat your entire body and sanitize it of all those malodor molecules. We've neutralized them all. Okay. Hair, everything. Then you use a lotion. And now that lotion goes into your skin and penetrates the skin. Now you've penetrated this active ingredient as a barrier into your skin. So as you're manufacturing, you're neutralizing as it goes. Well, guess what else that does? With the salon quality, emollients and all the things that we're putting into this system, along with this active ingredient, it literally heals your skin. So when you get out of the shower and you put that lotion on, you just can feel your skin. It's just like, wow, man, that just feels so good, And so you're healing your skin, you're keeping the dander from, being an issue, and now you're neutralizing as you go by using the lotion. And you put that lotion everywhere. And I do mean everywhere. So, and JJ says, well, how are you going to talk about that? I go, you just tell them. They'll figure it out. So I use it for under my arms, the whole works, and cover your whole body, get it good. Don't put it in your eyes, okay, if you haven't figured that out. But yeah, it's not eye drops, so. But use it in your whole body. Don't brush your teeth with it. We'll go there next. And now you've had this great barrier. You're ready to go. Now, let's put it in our clothing, okay? Because our body generates heat and releases moisture all the time. And as the moisture gets released, guess what's attached to that moisture? Exactly. Odor molecules. Okay. So as we put these clothing on, we've charged it now using the laundry detergent. Okay. So now we have a third layer of protection. So every single garment that you're wearing is now filtering these molecules and this moisture that's coming out. And it's neutralizing it as well, okay? So now there's that next layer of protection there. Well then, no matter how hard you try, by the time you get out to your stand, especially when you're an old guy like me, and JJ makes me get up in a 25-foot stand with a backpack on, I'm going to sweat a little bit. I try not to. It may not even be a wet sweat, but I'm heated enough to where I'm literally giving off and putting stuff on the surface at some level. And that's where the foamer comes in. And if the beauty of why didn't we go with a spray? Everybody says, I got a spray, you get a spray, you get a spray. Well, hey, listen, you're just, you're entrenched in, your brain is trained to say the spray is what you got to have, because the spray was probably the most effective piece of scent control throughout scent control history. It's an extremely effective thing. We still use spray, by the way. Okay, we don't have one yet, but we still use it. So we use the field foam when we get into the tree. We never take anything foreign in the tree that we want to put on the ground, like overspraying spray there out on your stand. Now you got these chemical smells. There's no way we would ever do that. So we take this foamer, you put it in your hand, and not only does it seal you once again, because it just penetrates your skin, and you put it in your neck, your head, your face, everything. And now you've re-neutralized everything, you've re-sanitized everything, and you've put a new barrier protection, and you're cooling yourself off so you don't, continue to sweat and give that stuff off. So that's why we went with the field foam. It's because it's 100% coverage. You know what I mean? You're not just putting droplets out there. So that's the last line of defense. There's definitely a lot more to scent control. I use a product, and I'm going to give a pitch out there, called Thera Breath. And I'm still doing research on this. But the Thera Breath gum actually sanitizes your mouth. It goes after these sulfur, smelly, malodor-style molecules in your mouth. And it has a flavor and everything. So I always start chewing it as soon as I'm done with my coffee. Well, actually, when I'm done with my coffee, I'll let JJ talk to this specifics on how you implement this stuff. But I personally will drink my coffee, then I'll go brush my teeth, then I'll put the Thera Breath gum in. So I don't have anything else once I put that gum in. Now I wear out the flavor. And this gum is designed so that once it just is like a rubber, there's no flavor, no smell or nothing, it's working continuously. as you chew it. You don't know it because you're not getting the flavor anymore, but it's actually working. That stuff's worked fantastic for us. So I would definitely recommend using that, and I'll be calling Thera Breath for a little bit of kickback on that. But but right now we're working on, we would like to develop our own gum. That's kind of the last piece of the puzzle. Not last piece, but that's a missing piece of the puzzle. But that's a lot of information. But really, once you do that, it is going to blow your absolute mind that a deer can stand directly downwind and have no idea that a human danger is there. And deer's behavior changed to a point where you think there's something wrong. You think there's something wrong because you know that that's not normal. JJ walked up on a deer on the ground, and the deer couldn't identify his smell. This is my take. He thought it had what's that disease with it?
CWD.
He thought it had CWD. He took it in and got it checked. He goes, something's not right with this deer. Bumped the deer. The deer ran off, looked around. He walked right up to it because he couldn't identify it was the danger. Killed it. Shot it. It's crazy. And I got stories of a guy that hit a deer. He went looking for it, and all of a sudden his target buck showed up. And he looked up, and it's dark now, so he's got a flashlight. He's down this little ravine. He looks up, he sees this buck silhouette, and he goes, oh my God, there's that buck, the target buck that he'd been waiting for. And he goes, well, maybe that's the one I shot. Maybe, and he couldn't figure out what's going on. The deer's looking down there, knowing something's down there. This mature target buck that you can't get close to. As they do, he went straight downwind to him, went down into the ravine. This guy's on a deer trail on the bottom of the ravine, and that wind is shooting right down the bottom of that to this deer. And the wind is blowing right at this deer. The deer starts walking up the trail to him. And he's like, whoa. In his mind, he's thinking, well, maybe that's the one I shot, and it lost blood, and it's kind of confused. It doesn't know what's going on because he was freaked out. And so this kept getting closer, and we're talking, 20 yards, and it's dark. He knocked an arrow. He didn't know what was going on. This deer got like 15 yards downwind of him, standing there, staring at him, wondering, what is this? Who is this? Is this danger? Couldn't figure it out. And this guy's just flipped out. Okay? Well, then the deer's like, left, right with the head, this and that, and he just kind of drifted off. But he stayed downwind. And so he's like, well, maybe that's the one that maybe I heard. And he kept following exactly where the deer went, and there was absolutely no blood. And then other things started happening to him where you get locked up in a field and deer were downwind walking 15 yards away, and they're tucked on a grass edge with him and his boy. And they had no idea he was there. And they're both on the ground. So what's weird is this is the very first guy that bought the stuff. He was waiting at the door. So he's a scent control fanatic. So he is doing it right. And he got this product. And as soon as that happened, it's like every single thing that I've believed and that I've tested and that I've known about my philosophy about get rid of the human presence now is confirmed to me. And that's just the beginning. And now it's been a couple years, and it's just like story after story after story after story. 100% of people came back that use it are just blown away by it. So once again, the concept, get rid of the human element, period. And that's got to go for your equipment and everything you do. Now, I'm going to pass it off because I'm talking too much.
Well, another interesting story I was thinking about, kind of a review that came in, and it's actually, we've heard it a couple of times. People will shower and they have pets. And their dog will walk up to them after they shower, and they kind of freak out because they can't identify the human, their owner, and they start licking them, trying to figure out, what happened to your scent.
That makes sense because
they kind of panic. So that's just another example of how that's working too. Kind of on a different end of things, but yeah, maybe on the strategy part, how do you want to start diving into scent control in the field?
Yeah, so I think JJ, it'd be good if you kind of walked us through what your scent control regiment looked like. And it might not even be hunting, but starting now. We're into July. You're obviously out in the field, out on your farm. What you're doing to start controlling your scent, preparing for the season, and then kind of your regiment throughout the season.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes in it. I'll start down a path and maybe you'll have to redirect me or something. But this time of the year, just starting to really think about the scent control, because most of the time we've been in the woods has been, on a tractor, on an ATV. You have all those foreign odors going in there anyway, so if you jump off real quick, put her in park and throw up a trail camera, it's not too big of an impact. Bucks are a little bit more calm. Deer are a little bit more calm. It seems like we can drive by them right now in the tractor and ATV and not really, they just sit there unless we jump off. Then we're a human, then we're a threat, and they'll instantly take off. So right now I haven't thought about it too much, but we're just starting to get to that point in July, August where, you need to start prepping your gear. Some gear takes even longer than months to get ready. I was thinking back this morning about, we bought a new pair of boots a couple years ago thinking, I think we received them in September, thinking they'd be our rut boots or our late season boots, and they came in just such a strong rubber smell that it was, you couldn't even get rid of it.
And
it took a
too.
year to get those boots in place to where they could be actually usable in a hunt. So we had to go shed hunting in them. We had to walk through a creek. It sounds crazy, but I threw them in my freezer for a while.
That's right, yeah.
That helped a lot. Broke down a lot of the oils on the boot so we could remove them. So yeah, prepping gear way in advance, especially like tree stands, build them, let them sit outside for 3 weeks before you put them in the tree. Don't bring them from, your local store, put them together and then throw them right up in the tree because they smell so bad. Ground blinds, things like that. So get all your gear ready, start airing it out. I never let my boots they never go in a contaminated area, but starting August, September, they're always outside. Flip them upside down, put them on it, put some stakes in the ground, and just let the rain wash them clean every night, or whatever the case may be. So just keep your gear outside. Let Mother Nature take care of it. Trying to think what else we have coming up here. Clean your bow. As you're shooting your bow, start to wipe it down. You have a lot of oils and sweat and bacteria you're getting on the handle, on your wrist strap, on your release. Your release is probably some type of cotton on the inside of it. So
yeah, you sweat using that a lot.
Start
just think
cleaning
about
that stuff up now.
On the inside, yeah, it's sweating in there, and you're getting that. It's just sucking into that thing.
From a vehicle standpoint, that's one that you got to start thinking about too. I know the back of my pickup, pretty much any gas, oils I keep out starting probably in August, September, and really clean it out. We use phase. We wash out the truck, scrub them down with a brush, rinse it out with the hose, let it sit outside. Really just start getting everything ready. I don't have any pets right now. There's a reason for that. Too bad my daughter keeps pointing at all the dogs. She's a 1-year-old. She's doggy, puppy, doggy. I'm thinking, oh man, she's going to want to put dogs in my truck, but I don't know. But yeah, keeping all that dander out of there, keeping all that, foreign objects. I get as far as I don't want to pick up any fast food, any takeout food come season. I don't want, just smell your truck or your car after you have go pick up a couple pizzas and put it in there and drive home. And the next day you open it, you're like, holy smokes, that smell is super strong. So pretty much avoiding all odors for about 4 or 5 months coming up here.
This is
the strategy.
A funny story here, quick, and I'll actually let Mike tell it. But we were out filming. This is a couple weeks ago now.
Oh, jeez.
And JJ, we were using his truck, and he ended up having a dog in the front of his truck, and the dog left some a few footprints around on the inside. But I don't think that was really the issue. And we showed up here the next week, and JJ was pretty distraught. But his truck was just mint detailed out. But he was all stressed out about it. I'll let kind of Mike take it from there. He's got his own opinion on why JJ got his truck detailed.
It's funny because JJ is so crazy about scent control, which is a great thing. Okay, but this is a service dog. It was a situation where, the dog's coming in no matter what. And, we had to have this person and this dog in our vehicle to get him to where we needed to go. So that's no big deal. They're wearing a vest, this and that. Dog gets in there and it's hot out.
Nice muddy day.
On a nice muddy day. It gets a couple footprints on there. And there's hair. There's a significant amount of hair. And that's all he could talk about. I don't know what that dog, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And why didn't I put seat covers on? He was just going on and on. I'm like, dude, just go get it cleaned. It's not that big a deal. Oh, but hunting's coming up, and it was just so funny to see him get neurotic about that dog in there. And absolutely, within 2 days, that thing was in for $170 detail.
Well, and I could tell you he was even stressed out, and that was here beginning of June, and he was stressed out about the detail smell still in his car, and he made the comment that, well, I can tell you that's the last time it's getting detailed before the season.
Yeah, give it a couple months to air out. Just so many, gosh, and it is kind of crazy, but I remember, and it kind of all started back when I started filming Rod down south, and he was super anal about scent control, and we learned a lot from him as far as the bacterial odors and pets. And I remember we'd be driving to the stand, we'd be following a truck, 50, 75 yards in front of us. That guy's smoking up there. I can smell his cigarette. He's like, roll up your window,
Hurry, roll up your window.
Is this like real? But,
And
we were on big deer, so I can't.
Well, I'm going to add on to that. And then Rod, he had dogs. But he just like completely, it was a separate deal. And they do not go into the sacred area or, have any kind of contact with their smell in that sacred area. I mean, that's the way he was. And he had a great sense of smell. Now, I was in school and played a lot of sports, and I broke my nose a number of times. You can imagine that with the size of it. But, I lost some sense of smell, so I didn't have quite what it is. But Rod told me he could smell a big, mature buck if he was coming, and if he was coming from the upwind side. He could smell him. And, it wasn't really that long after that, and I've had my nose fixed since then, but you can smell those deer. They smell horrible because they're trying to smell that way. You know what I mean? But, yeah, Rod was a scent. Ooh.
And, we're talking about pet smells and smoke smells. There's definitely ways, and there's really good hunters that have both pets. Obviously, shed hunting is a big thing. People are taking their dogs out, have pets. Really good hunters that smoke too. And it's just a matter of, keeping that separation from gear and body during the season, equipment, vehicle, things like that, from those odors, and you can absolutely be really, really successful too. So it's not like we're saying, if you have a dog, if you smoke, then you just can't kill a big deer, because that's not the case.
I was a smoker when we were doing the studies, when the boys were starting to come and everything else, and we didn't know scent control very well. And so as we started to get into it deeper, I knew right away I can't do that. So I'm like washing the heck out of my face and my mouth and everything else. And then I would use Nicorette. You know what I mean? Because if you're a smoker, I'm sorry, you'll make up any excuse in your head that you can. The deer ain't gonna smell me. I'm just gonna have a smoke or whatever. Or maybe just super dose before you go out there, or whatever, to get that nicotine. But just use a different form of nicotine, so that it's not, if you can't quit, but quit. Just quit freaking smoking.
That's, probably.
So kind of continuing on now, what once the season hits, JJ, what are you doing from a scent control standpoint?
A lot. I'll just start with clothing and gear, I guess. And we've talked about this a lot on our instructional videos, and we go to trade shows and people ask questions, and we walk through it step by step, and that's all a good time to learn more there as well. But from clothes, we always have our liners, which are something that we have multiple of, whether it's 3-4 layers, different layers that we can just rotate, wear one time. Same with socks, underwear, things like that. Keep those separate from our outer layers, which we will wear a couple different times before we wash them again. Wash everything in phase, keep them all clean, keep them aired out, keep our totes nice and clean. You can wash those outside too, let them dry, and then put everything in these totes and seal them up so they can't absorb any odors. And
get those odor sponges in there too. We didn't really talk about that.
Put odor sponges in there, which are basically a giant silica bead bag with a carbon sleeve that absorbs all moisture, all odor, and filters it out too. So you keep it in your bag, in your clothing bin, bow case, gun case. Prevents bacterial growth,
mold,
rust, mold, things like that.
I keep them in my boots a lot.
Keep them in your boots, and more of a preventative odor control in boots. If you have a pair of boots that it's super smelling, maybe they're like 10 years old and it's just infused into those soles, it's hard to get that out of a boot. You can.
Let me tell you about that.
But But the
Okay.
odor sponges are more of a preventative for the boot.
I'll give you a tip on that. So let's just say you have a pair of boots like that. Go ahead and pull out those soles and take some, some phase and just scrub. I mean, I'm like fill it up like it's a bucket of water with phase and solution and scrub it and just soak and wet them boots completely. Okay. And I promise you, you throw those odor checks in there and by the next day they'll be dry. And I know that's a strong statement, but I did it just this summer. Remember, I went in, I was watering some of those pine trees, and I stepped in the creek to get it, with a 5-gallon pail on a little sandbar in there, and it was a quicksand. Boom, boot went all the way up, and I mean, the boot's full of water. I'm like, blah, blah, rah, 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 rah. It was hot, but that's okay. So I came out, poured all the water out of my boot, everything else, and then I went in there and I rinsed out the mud and the sand and everything else, and we were going to be shooting again the next day. So I thought, oh, what the heck? Well, let's check out these odor checks, see how well they will dry. And then now it's hot and semi-humid. I threw them in them boots, went home, came out the next day, and I put them on, and they were dry as a bone. I mean, it was mind-blowing. No batteries, no nothing. I mean, so those things absolutely. Get them boots, scrub them out with water, everything else, put them odor checks in. And they're designed to suck that moisture out. And then it releases it in the air. That's how it's designed. Okay. And so it's that generation of sucking in the moisture molecules and kicking them out into the air. That's what it's designed to do, and that's why they dry so quickly.
Yeah, there's really a lot that we do from the body to the gear, and I don't know if we want to break it all down here, so I think the instructional videos on the app under the scent control would be a good source for that. But what was I thinking? Oh, I think the true way to tell if deer are starting to pick you out in the tree, then you got to figure out what they're smelling. And I think the main things we've realized is, we can control our body odor, we control our clothing odor, our gear odor, boots, things like that. Usually comes down to the breath, which is a bad one, and then just that reoccurring sweat. So like I have an experience, and maybe I'll just tell a quick little story where scent control's on point. I'm over in Wisconsin hunting by myself, airing out my gear every night, taking the showers in the morning. Everything's just really, really clean. New liners every hunt. Outer gear super clean. And after a few days, I started getting, the deer started, walking downwind, picking up their nose and starting to pick something up. And I'm trying to think, what's the weak point here? That's what you got to figure out. Well, I cover my breath. I'm doing all this stuff that we talk about with breath in the instructionals. Well, it's got to be my hands. My hands sweat a little bit. So my gloves, I wore these 2 or 3 hunts.
Sweat,
so
for sure.
There's my weak point. So I'm actually, and then I begin to test it like a doe comes downwind. I put them in my pockets. She doesn't bust me. And the next deer comes downwind and I pull them out and I'm starting to film and then that deer busts me. Well, then I'm thinking, okay, we'll keep going. Next deer comes by, put my hands back in my pockets. Next deer goes by, doesn't bust me. So there's like weak points. So okay, I need more pairs of gloves. I can't be wearing them 2-3 times.
Well,
that sweat's in there. So
your nose is running too now, So your nose is running, so you're wiping your nose with your glove, and I'm thinking Minnesota here, but
when people are saying I keep getting busted, there's something wrong. There's a weak point somewhere. Is it? And you got to figure it out. Is it your boots because they're next to a tank of gas? What is that smell? Why are you getting busted? Because if you do everything the way we describe it, and you're in that fresh burst that you're not sweating, you're foaming down, clean gear, clean clothes, you shouldn't get busted. So that's kind of my thought process on that.
I'm going to add to that just a little bit real quick. So now we take the scent control and exactly JJ's thought process. That's how you develop, great scent control strategy. Okay, as you think of it that way and you test it that way. And so now let's think about this. Okay, so we target all the human body odors. Now let's just say we did a fantastic job of that. Okay. And the deer have no idea the human is there. But maybe your gun's got a little oil on it. Maybe there's some, gunpowder. Maybe there's with the arrow, the fletchings, or there's just so many different things. Your backpack, your camera, because your camera's inside,
inside.
That's not sitting out in the the yard. So, and then you got the what do you call them? You camera guys should know what they are. The mouse cover things or whatever you call them.
The wind.
The wind.
Yeah, windscreen.
Yeah, windscreen. Look at that thing. That's just a odor grabbing machine there, man, with all that stuff. So they may pick up on some things that, or if your bag was in the garage and you got this, there's a bag of fertilizer sitting in there because you did your lawn. There's just so many things. There's, lubricants in your garage. There's all those things there that could be contaminating your gear or any gear. And it could be anything. It could be gasoline, like JJ said, anything, right? And the deer comes up. You've eliminated the human body odor, but you notice that the deer's kind of like, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? You know what I mean? And you can tell by their body language. They're like, no big deal. And then they go on and they keep eating. Now you see that a lot. Okay? So as long as it's not something that's going to just completely alarm them, and if it's not an extremely intense amount of odor, and I think that's a big part, and we need to touch on that, is the intensity of the smell tells them something different too. Okay? The intensity of the smell is going to be way less at a distance, obviously, especially if you got a windier day and you get dispersion. We haven't even talked about that part yet either. But yeah, you can't get rid of 100% of all odors. It's not possible. But when you get rid of the human odor and you do as much as you can to get rid of all other foreign odors, you're going to see things that will blow your mind, and the deer are not going to be afraid.
So I have a question here. What's your thoughts on, and it's kind of been a craze lately, the last few years in the hunting industry, ozone generators. What's your thought on that? And using a product like Phase compared to using an Ozonics, for example?
Yeah, I think ozone is a pretty good tool. Actually, we don't use it just because we're trying to test the effectiveness of Phase on its own merit. So we don't use ozone, but if I were to use ozone, we look at it more of a complementary product maybe to, we're focusing on body odor. Ozone's focusing more on just kind of capturing. I guess. Well, it just kind of,
ozone probably covers a wider range of molecular structures, so it would be definitely complementary.
I would say the way that I would use ozone is to kill the odor in my gear.
Yeah.
So like you see the bags that crush the scent or whatever you want to say there. But yeah, they're not working on your body odor. So it's kind of two different angles to it, and I think they can be used together really successful. I know deer do smell the ozone, so it can trigger something in them out in the field too. So we don't personally use it, but if I were to use it, I would use it on my gear, and I would maybe crush some of that bacteria that's in my clothing from the previous hunt, so I don't have to wash it one more time.
I guess I would
That's
use
how I would use it.
I would use ozone maybe in a little different mentality. Exactly what you're saying is very relevant. I'm not saying it's not, but I would use it if I'm in an enclosed area, like in a blind. I look at it as a sanitizer. Okay, so if I went out and I hunted that day and I didn't have a bad day and, I didn't put a lot of scent or sweat or anything in my clothes, I could see sanitizing something, in the tub or the closet or whatever it is, boom, just real quickly. And I would use it that way. If I was in a blind, I might use it that way. I think in a tree, it wouldn't be as effective as getting rid of the human body odor, and this is just an opinion. I'm not saying it wouldn't help, but the way the air and the thermals and everything's being distributed, I don't think you could saturate the entire zone of scent cone just with an ozone itself. So if you were just relying on that only to get rid of your human body odor in everywhere within that scent cone, I'm not going to say it isn't possible, but I'm going to say it's highly unlikely.
And it can be effective in that use, but then you got to think of how does it work with your ground scent, the physical touching of the ground, the leaves, the grass, the sticks, climbing your stand, those skin cells, the dander. It can't control that, but it can do some other things that are beneficial if paired correctly, with body.
Yeah, we're not ozone bashers by any means.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, no, and I was just asking because I know it's a big craze now. My thinking on that is, I won't say that I'm a fan or against ozone. I don't really use it too much, but I will say the biggest thing for me is when you talk about the presence of dander and ground scent, like use ozone if you want to use nosonics, use nosonics, but think past that, develop a broader strategy and think about the things that ozonics or that ozone doesn't cover. And it's not going to cover your ground scent. It's not going to do anything for you there. So think about it, further than just sitting in the tree. And that's why phase has a whole system.
I actually have an ozone story. I mean, I knew about and tried ozone, tested ozone way before anybody even knew what the heck it was. Some guy came up with it, and the machine was about the size of a projector. You know what I mean? And it was an ozone machine. And he's like, Mike, try this. This is the greatest thing ever in the world. I'm like, what is this, And of course, my mind is in scent control at this time. This is back in the carbon days, right? And he goes, no, man, you got to try it. I swear, And anyway, just the business itself just didn't really work out for the guy. At the time, I think it was like $200 he was trying to sell them for, which today would be probably close to what they cost. And so he gives me this machine. I'm like, you know what? My truck stinks. I know it stinks. I'm going to try it in my truck. I'm going to get the ozone it out. So before I go out, I'm, ready to go, sitting in my deal and blah, 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 blah. So I throw it in my truck, plug it in, turn it on, let it run all night long. And windows closed, everything. And except for the crack where the cord had to go through, and did that for like a week or two. And we didn't even realize this till like years later. All of a sudden, the ceiling belt started falling down in my pickup. Well, that never happened in any other Chevy pickup of that model ever before. And then it started kind of clicking with us. And JJ even said, Dad, remember when your truck had the thing hanging down when you put that ozone in there? He says, that probably broke down the glue. And I'm going, you're probably exactly right. So be careful with ozone. If you overdose it, there's a couple things that can happen. One is it can deteriorate polymers. So in other words, your boots, it can destroy them, crumble them, your poly in your clothing. And so if you got expensive like Sitka gear or something, you destroy the elastic band. That's a bad deal. It can be bad on the boots. It can be harmful in an enclosed area if it's oversaturated in your lungs. It can do some damage. So be careful with it, okay? And make sure you understand it when you're using it. But yeah, I've known about ozone, and after that happened back then I just kind of blew it off. Like it's just, it didn't really do anything for me. That I noticed, so I just kind of blew it off.
Yeah, and that machine didn't have the regulators or timers, so it was just full-on blast.
Full on, who knows how much is being
I think they got it
out of
a
there.
little bit figured out now, obviously. But
way more. Yeah.
I kind of want to end here talking about some hunting strategy, and I'll interject some here. I look at scent control a little differently, and it's just based on my experience. I've filmed a lot of places, filmed a lot of different people, ones with really good scent control and ones with really poor scent control. And I've filmed a lot of people shoot really big deer with horrible scent control. I'm the type of guy that when I go out and hunt, I try to always play the wind. I try to put myself in those weak spots, like, weak spots for the deer, as much as possible. It's not always possible. And that's why I practice good scent controls, because nothing is perfect. And I want to talk about some of those hunting situations, and especially focus on thermals, because I think thermals are misunderstood by a lot of people. So maybe JJ, you can touch on what thermals are and how they react in different circumstances. For example, especially hunting here in Minnesota, and doing a lot of hunting in Wisconsin and kind of in this bluff country where you have rolling hills and not flat terrain. You have swirling winds. Just because you have a north wind doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a north wind. And then thermals come into play. Hunting the wind is all fine and dandy, and I do it as much as possible. But it's not always true, and a lot of times not true. So talk to about thermals a little bit, and maybe even the differences in hunting on a windy day versus a calm day, some of the different variables that you encounter out there.
Well, yeah, first of all, you are right. There's definitely stands and setups that are bulletproof where you can get away with pretty much anything. You got a riverbank behind you, slide up, scent control, not a problem. Play most wind directions. Then there's the other spots that they're just a low spot or a bowl. You're in the timber. No matter what wind, the weather app says, it just seems to swirl. So there's all kinds of different scenarios, and part of that is terrain. The other part is just wind direction. When it goes to the thermal part of it, in the morning, air starts to heat up. Your thermals and your scent actually begin to rise, so they'll push uphill. It all depends on what kind of terrain you're hunting into. If it's big flat ground, maybe you don't experience that quite as much. But yeah, so it's going to pull up higher in the mornings, and then in the evenings when things cool down, your scent is going to push down in those bottoms. And it really throws you off. I mean, you could have a hill that's facing east. Your wind is blowing from the east, so you think you're good. But maybe at night, you're hunting PM. It just starts to push back down in the opposite direction. Can really kind of throw you off, especially if it's really calm. So strong winds can kind of counteract and make the thermals less of an impact on your hunt. Really calm winds, you can have some big thermal impacts that are completely opposite of what the wind direction is supposed to be. So that's kind of the thermal thing. Yeah, I don't know where to go from there.
Well, I got some comments on that too, and these are just like personal experiences. We really had we didn't have an idea of the visual of the wind before we started using wind checkers. And once you start doing that, it really, really opens your eyes. Okay. So you think because of the west wind direction, just like JJ's saying, and you say you're hunting a field edge, it's an open food plot in front of you, and there's not a lot of timber, but you're in a patch of timber. Okay. So the wind's blowing, let's say at about 3 to 10 miles an hour. Let's just go there. Okay. Or 3 to 8. Somewhere in that vicinity where it's not just powering through, okay? So you're getting this wind come through, and you throw out a little powder, and all of a sudden, whoosh, it takes a left-hand turn. It's like, what the heck? Then you throw it out again, whoosh, now it goes off to the right a little bit. And then by the time it dissipates, it's kind of going a different direction, it's getting shoved down, okay? Well, then we knew that powder wasn't as effective, so the floaters were a big thing. Actually, we manufacture them now, and this is why. Because if you put out a floater, we'd put one of them out and watch it. And you could watch it for, if it gets through the trees and everything, you can watch it for 50, 100 yards, So you could watch that floater come out, whoop, take a high route, and all of a sudden it take a left-hand turn, and it kind of move straight out, and then it'll land about 20 yards to the left direction of the wind that you were expecting it to be. Now, 20 yards difference where your wind is going compared to where your brain and the Weather Channel told you you're supposed to go is a major thing. Okay? That's how impactful thermals can be. And when you can visually see that and identify that, it's a big, big deal. It's a big deal. And so I just wanted to kind of comment on that. The other day we were burning a wood pile out at the farm. Had to wait for a west wind because I didn't want the embers and stuff to go up into the tree line or toward the house or the barn and all that kind of stuff. So it had to be a west wind, kind of maybe a little northwest wind would be okay. Got the wind, and it was 5 to 7 miles an hour. Okay, so it was enough to push it out. We started that thing, and it's blowing right into the timber. And we're like, what the heck? And now this thing is getting huge, 20, 30-foot freaking fire here. And we were kind of freaking out, and we watched it change. It'd go east, and it would go west, and you could see the flames and the smoke. And, yeah, it was quite an eye-opener when it comes to thermal.
because we were down in a low spot too, where the train was shoving everything down, and the wind would blow over top of the trees and just start to swirl down in there too. So that was kind of a big factor. But I was just thinking, how many times have you seen a big buck that catches your wind? When is that? It's always in that first part of the morning or the last part of the day when the wind dies down. You have the perfect wind all hunt if you're in an evening sit.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden it dies down and the thermals start to kick in, and he shows up and your wind just does a 180. The thermal kicks in, and he, you just hear that story all the time. Or it's the morning and you got a nice north wind coming in and it's dead calm. And you have a southeast wind and he comes from the north. And you're thinking, I should have a north wind. It happens almost all the time. And you hear that story at trade shows all the time. And people just, finally, after years and years, it's finally clicked in my mind with these thermals kicking in. And
I'm going to add to
they
that.
move during that time for a reason. They know how to use the terrain. They know how to use the wind tunnels and the thermals. And they have their path picked out for the wind.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll real quickly add to that. Hunting in a heavy wind, a 15, 20 mile an hour wind, and I've done it many times. The amount of deer that I've documented and seen during those times with those heavy winds, I mean, the amount and volume of deer that you see up and moving during those times is like significantly lower than a moderate wind. If you got a heavy wind, the deer just do not like to move. And maybe if you get down in some of them low areas, it might change some of that. But those heavy winds, not, they'll wait till it's dark. Yep. They'll wait till it's dark.
Yeah, they definitely, a lot of people think that the deer just move at first light or last light because of, they feel more comfortable with the darkness or something like that. Well, it has a lot to do with the wind. They're going to put everything in their favor that they can. And that's, that's another point of somebody that says, well, I'm just going to hunt the wind. Well, I think some of the best hunters out there will hunt a marginal wind. I think you can be most successful sometimes if you don't hunt the perfect wind, because if the wind's perfect for you, well, it's not necessarily perfect for the deer. A deer doesn't, a mature buck doesn't want to come, straight upwind, So think about that too when you're placing your stands this time of year. Don't just maybe place them for the perfect wind, but, think about, hunting in a crosswind. I've heard guys that shoot really big bucks, give them 20% of the wind. A scent doesn't blow just one straight line. It's a cone, right? Your scent blows in a cone. Do everything that you can to mask it. Try to put it in your favor, but man, I can tell you that I've used phase for the last couple of years and I've really been amazed on how well it's worked when you get in a bad situation or a situation where you don't have the advantage of the wind.
Are you comfortable in telling the public about what you did to your wife last year?
Yeah.
Put him on the spot now.
That's interesting, and this is a great testament too. So I have a spot that is really difficult with the wind. And it's a spot where there's a deer I've been watching now for the last 3 years that I really want to try to kill here coming up in a month or two. 2 months, I guess. 3 months we're out. But this is a spot where I have top access. It's on a field edge, and there's really no great wind situations for it. The deer come from the south. We have primarily north winds, northwest winds here. You get a south wind, that's great, and I'd rather hunt it with the south wind. But the problem is, all these does come out first, right? And those are sometimes the hardest ones to beat. And they get upwind of you, and if they bust you before the big buck moves, then you're screwed anyway. So done. It's like this spot. It seems like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So like your scent control has to be just prime. Well, my wife. And this was last year or the year before. It was kind of when we first started. I first started to use phase, and she wanted to hunt. She doesn't get to hunt very often, and it was this one spot I had some really good bucks coming out here. Perfect deer, great deer for her.
Well, to be fair, you just had a kid.
Yeah, we just had.
She's not going to get very many windows to hunt.
Yeah, and he was only about, I think at that point, maybe he was 4 or 5 months old. And she wanted to get out and hunt, and I was going to stay home and watch Barrett, and it was perfect, and I thought, man, I got to get her in the stand, right? Because these deer were just coming out regular. We had a north wind. And I'm like, man, we'll try it, right? So I got her all phased up, and she actually loved phase. And they preach, you guys preach that it's salon quality. She loves it, and she uses it regularly because it feels good on her skin. So anyways, got her all phased up and everything to the T, and I put her in the stand, and I remember driving away and thinking, man, like, she's not going to see a freaking deer.
You said that to me.
I did.
I ran into you and you said
felt
that.
Terrible, and I'm like, wow, maybe something will happen. And so I let her sit there and hadn't heard anything from her. She doesn't have real good cell phone service there. And Barrett and I actually came early in the truck and sat there and watched some deer in the field quite a ways to the east of where she was sitting, and saw a bunch of deer out there. And I figured, well, that's where all the deer came out. They probably smelled her, and they came out, way down here. And so I went and picked her up, and she walked out at dark, and she's putting her stuff away, and she didn't really say too much. And she gets in the truck, and I said, well, honey, how'd it go? And she said, well, I saw 19, I think she said. I said, saw 19, really? I said, did they go below you and kind of skirt you and go out to the east? She said, no, they came right down the trail 15 yards below me. I said, below me? Below you? I said, which way was your wind blowing? Well, it was blowing in my face. I said, so it was blowing right towards them? She said, yeah. I said, well, did you get busted? She said, no. And at that point right there, I was amazed, and that was the first time I was really a firm, absolute believer that phase worked, because I knew exactly where the wind was blowing. I knew the trail the deer walked up from, and I thought going into that there was no way that she could sit there and not get busted. And all those deer filtered right by her, 19 of them. Now, one of the bucks that she wanted to shoot didn't show up that night. But, when you can have 19 deer walk by you like that, and I know exactly what the wind was doing, and her not get busted, that was proof for me.
Well, and I was going to make a comment on this when we were talking about, giving the deer, 10%, giving the deer 20% of your wind. And, I'm not saying that that's not the right strategy, but after using this stuff for even many more years than you've been using it and actually, designing the system, I literally am at a point where I'm not afraid to give the deer 50 to 80% of the wind. No kidding. Now, it's probably more important for me, and JJ's opening up my eyes to this, that I can get in and out of that stand without being detected. To me, that's more important than anything right now, because I feel that comfortable with scent control. Really do. It's changing the way I think and hunt. It really is.
And think about that from a hunter's perspective. If you don't have to pay that much attention to the wind, now, am I saying I'm going to throw the wind out altogether? No. But for the guy that doesn't have that much time to hunt, and he can only hunt on the weekends or only hunt certain days, or what, you just because it's a north wind doesn't mean, well, I'm not going to go hunting today. Like, think about it. If you can really beat the wind, beat these deer's nose, think about the opportunities that opens up for the everyday hunter. That's game changing, so I don't know. I'm a believer. I know last year we were hunting in Iowa, another quick story here, eye-opening experience for me. We were sitting on the ground, and there was two of us, and normally when I'm hunting, there's two of us because there's a camera guy and a hunter, and we had these deer come out in the food plot in front of us, and we're sitting on the ground, and we have this mature doe, and she's 5 yards from the blind. Now the blind's brushed in good, and like she can't see us. The blind's been there for a long time. The wind is blowing directly at her, and I know this for a fact because, one, I know the wind direction, and two, because the sun was coming up behind her and it was cold out, and her breath was going straight away from us. And she's standing there at 5 yards looking at us, looking through us, and she would go to feed and put her head back up and look right through us. No idea that a human was there. And this is a mature doe at 5 yards on the ground. I've never seen that. I've never had that happen before. No matter what kind of scent control I've used.
Nobody's going to believe you. That's possible, but it's just happening.
It's on video.
There's just no question. It's just happening. I know it's mind blowing. I get that. And there was a point I was going to make about, scent control and how, it is and isn't 100%. But really, when it comes to the scent control part of it, it's not something where you can just grab foamer and just put it on. Oh, it's going to work, No. The people that are having these experiences are going all out and using the entire system and doing things like JJ explained and being smart and doing even more and walking in, right, and using those strategies, understanding thermals, understanding all of that. Those are the people that are having these kinds of experiences. Like that guy I told you about that had the buck walk down in the ravine. I mean, he is a scent control fanatic. But if you are willing to commit to it and do it the way it's designed to work, I promise you, you will have that that's not possible experience. It'll happen.
Well, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. We're running out of time. Check out Phase. You won't be sorry. Get it sooner than later. Start implementing it now. Getting ready for the season. Implement it into your season preparation when you're hanging tree stands. Putting out trail cameras so we get closer to the season here. We're all getting excited. Bucks are starting to grow. It's going to be here before you know it. So thanks for tuning in. Good luck this season. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Check out the free Deer Society app. Check out some of those scent control tutorials and tips that are on that Deer Society app. It's free, so make sure you download that on iTunes or App Store. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.